The Grand Council chamber was unlike anything Commander Ilara Voss had seen before, even after years of interstellar diplomacy. A vast dome of crystal lattice soared above the delegates' tiers, its panels refracting light into shifting ribbons of gold and silver. Holographic projections of distant star clusters drifted lazily in the air, each one a reminder of the reach and authority of the Galactic Council. Ilara stood alone at the center dais. Around her, tier upon tier of alien envoys gazed down, their varied forms casting strange silhouettes against the chamber lights. Some wore ornate ceremonial robes, others shimmered with bioluminescent patterns that pulsed in rhythm to unspoken thoughts. Every species represented here had once been a rising power until they agreed to abide by the Council's governance. Today, they expected humanity to follow the same path. A voice, smooth and precise, filled the chamber. It came from the Council. Speaker, a tall figure of translucent blue whose form seemed carved from living glass. Commander Ilara Voss of Earth, the speaker intoned. The Council has reached a unanimous resolution. The people of your homeworld are to cease all independent deep space exploration, dismantle unregistered fleets, and submit your remaining vessels to Council oversight. The words hung in the air, sharp as cut crystal. Several delegates leaned forward, anticipating the human reaction. Many had warned that Earth's rapid advances, leaping from orbital travel to deep space exploration in barely a century, were too sudden, too dangerous. A few suspected that humanity's technology was not entirely self-developed. Ilara's dark eyes swept slowly across the chamber. She could feel the weight of expectation pressing in, as if every representative wanted to see her crack, either in protest or in surrender. The speaker's gaze rested on her, waiting. She said nothing, no murmur of agreement, no rebuttal, no request for clarification, only silence. Ilara stood perfectly still, her expression unreadable. Her hands were relaxed at her sides. The subtle arch of her brow was neither defiant nor submissive. To the Council, it was a silence that demanded interpretation. The pause stretched on, and a ripple of unease passed through the chamber. Whispers in dozens of languages flickered through the translation network. Some envoys exchanged puzzled glances. Others frowned, their patience thinning. Finally, Ilara inclined her head slightly, not a bow, not an acknowledgement, but something in between, and said in a voice both calm and clear, "I have heard the Council's resolution," and then nothing more. She waited just long enough for the silence to settle again, then turned to leave the dais. Her footsteps were unhurried, echoing softly in the vast chamber. The speaker's voice rose, laced with a faint note of surprise. "Commander Voss, is that your full response?" Ilara paused at the threshold, looking back over her shoulder. Her lips curved into a faint, almost imperceptible smile. "Today," she said, "it is." She stepped through the archway, and the chamber doors closed behind her. The Council was left in uneasy quiet. Delegates shifted in their seats. Some considered her reaction a diplomatic failure, a sign that humanity had no real plan to resist. Others found themselves strangely unsettled, as though the lack of protest hinted at something far more deliberate. In the observation galleries above, news drones captured every moment. Within hours, her silent exchange would be broadcast across hundreds of systems, analyzed by experts, and debated in public forums. But on Earth, in the secure meeting rooms buried beneath the Andes, the real discussion had already begun. Leaders from every nation, every colony, and every major human organization sat at a single table. They had watched Ilara's performance in real time, and they knew it had been no accident. Her silence had been the first move, and the game had only just begun. Within 12 standard hours, Ilara's brief appearance in the Grand Council chamber had been replayed more times than any speech in recent memory. Across hundreds of star systems, citizens, officials, and analysts examined her every gesture, every pause, and especially the faint, unreadable smile. On the main broadcast channel of Varela Prime, a panel of alien commentators argued heatedly. "It is capitulation," insisted a scaled elder of the Drishti Confederation. She said nothing because humanity has no leverage. The silence is admission. An avian tactician from the Yelkin hives shook his feathered crest. "You are mistaken. It is not surrender. It is misdirection. The humans have been gathering resources in secret. I have seen their colonial data. The smile was a warning. In the heart of Earth's lunar capital, no such debates took place. Instead, in a windowless command hall deep beneath the lunar surface, Admiral Reyes and Prime Minister Adrian Lau met with Ilara in a secure room lined with passive dampeners. They did not sit. "You gave them nothing," Reyes said at last, leaning against the table. "Not even a hint they could use." "That was the point," Ilara replied, her tone calm but her eyes alight with calculation. "They wanted a reaction to measure us by. Now all they have is speculation." Lau folded her arms. "Speculation can be dangerous. Some factions will believe we're bluffing. Others will assume we're preparing something they can't match. Both could provoke preemptive action." "Exactly," Ilara said. "They'll waste time trying to decide which one is true." Back in the public eye, the absence of a clear answer became its own kind of drama. Worlds aligned with the Council speculated about sanctions and enforcement. Those on the periphery, independent colonies, trading enclaves, and minor species with long memories of the Council's authority whispered about the possibility of Earth becoming a rallying point. The Council itself had fractured into two informal camps. The first, led by the Othron Directorate, argued for immediate action, inspection fleets, seizure of disputed colonies, and strict oversight. The second, spearheaded by the Pacelian Union, warned that such moves would only provoke humanity, a species notorious for its stubborn unpredictability. Meanwhile, something curious began to happen in human space. Civilian cargo manifests began arriving ahead of schedule, as though ships had taken shorter routes than physically possible by conventional navigation. Remote colonies that normally relied on monthly supply runs suddenly showed surpluses. Mining. Outposts in asteroid belts delivered refined metals without requesting additional fuel shipments. The Council's Intelligence Bureau noticed. Reports marked with urgency climbed up through bureaucratic layers, each one noting anomalies in human logistical capacity. Yet no direct evidence of violations existed, only results that didn't fit into established models. On the outer edges of the Zorith sector, a pair of Council patrol ships encountered a human exploration vessel where no registered route existed. The humans claimed to be surveying gravitational anomalies and left without conflict, but the energy readings from their engines remained unmatched by anything in the Council's databases. Back on Earth, the official channels remained quiet. No press conferences, no diplomatic statements, no threats. Just the same calm, deliberate stillness that Ilara had displayed before the Council, like the pause before a carefully chosen next move. In private, however, the strategy was taking shape. Teams in hidden research stations perfected navigation, systems that could slip between stable points in space without the need for traditional jump gates. Small, automated stations were being deployed in deep space, each one a silent stepping stone for future expansion. Ilara understood the power of perception. By offering no verbal resistance, she had given the Council a story it could not easily interpret. Every day they hesitated, humanity's preparations advanced. The quiet storm was gathering, and it was invisible, until the moment it would no longer be. Council Intelligence Division Hall. 7 was usually a place of measured calm. Data flowed in, algorithms parsed it, analysts cross-checked anomalies, and the quiet hum of servers filled the long hours. But today, that hum was drowned out by urgent voices and the tapping of multiple translators working in real time. Senior analyst Threvik, a long-limbed member of the Travathi species, stared at a projection hovering above his desk. It was a three-dimensional chart mapping resource flows across known space. In the human sectors, glowing arcs of traffic had begun forming patterns, dense, efficient corridors that should have taken decades to establish, yet had appeared in months. He adjusted the filters, narrowing the parameters. The patterns remained. More concerning, several of the shipping lanes intersected regions that had no registered jump gates, no known refueling points, and no logistical infrastructure the Council could detect. "This is not normal," he murmured. Nearby, a Pacelian liaison approached. "What have you found?" Threvik enlarged a segment of the map. "Look here. This mineral shipment left the Marek Belt in human territory. 6 days later, it arrives at Kepler Station, on the opposite side of the sector. By standard gate travel, that should take 22 days, minimum. There are no intermediate transfers. The vessel doesn't even register a jump signature." The liaison's feathers fluffed in unease. "That's impossible." "Exactly," Threvik replied. Across the galaxy, similar observations emerged from independent sources. Merchant captains claimed to have encountered human freighters in locations where no safe navigation charts existed. Automated beacons, previously dormant for centuries, were suddenly reactivated, always just before a human vessel passed through the region. Inside the council chamber, these reports fueled heated debates. Othran delegates argued for the immediate seizure of human ships for inspection, but the Pacelian Union pushed back, warning that provoking humans without proof could be disastrous. "They are doing something we cannot explain," the Pacelian envoy stated firmly. "That alone should caution us. Our history with this species shows they rarely display their full capabilities until they choose to, and by then, it is too late to control the outcome." Meanwhile, in human space, the developments were not openly acknowledged. Official bulletins focused on benign topics, trade agreements, cultural exchanges, scientific conferences, but beneath the surface, the network Alara and her allies had been building was coming online. At a station hidden within the rings of a remote gas giant, technicians monitored shimmering distortions between two anchored satellites. These were microfold corridors, tiny stable tiers in space-time that allowed ships to step between distant points without the massive energy requirements of standard jump gates. They were nearly invisible to conventional scanners, detectable only by those who knew where and how to look. Captain Darius Cole, commander of the research vessel Horizon's Edge, had just returned from a test run. His ship had crossed what would normally be a 2-week journey in less than 30 hours. Corridor stability held the entire trip, he reported to Alara over a secure channel. "No drift, no interference. If we keep this pace, we can link the entire inner network within a year." "That's faster than I expected," Alara replied, her voice measured. "Good. Keep routes unpredictable. The Council must never know the full map." Her strategy was simple. Deny the Council the ability to define human capability. The moment humanity's limits were known, they could be countered. But if those limits remained undefined, if humans seemed to do the impossible without explanation, then the balance of uncertainty shifted in Earth's favor. Back in the Council's intelligence halls, Threvik stared at the ever-updating traffic maps. He didn't believe in ghosts or myths, but the humans' sudden logistical precision seemed to belong to another age of exploration, one thought lost to history. Something old, he thought, or something entirely new. Either way, the galaxy would not remain the same once the truth emerged. The Council's debates could only go in circles for so long. Eventually, the Authoran Directorate won a narrow vote to authorize discrete information recovery measures. In plain language, infiltration. To avoid the political storm of open inspections, the mission would be covert. Small teams posing as traders, engineers, and travelers, slipping into human-controlled sectors to gather direct evidence. Officially, they didn't exist. Unofficially, they were the most capable operatives the Council's Intelligence Bureau could assemble. The lead operative, Kay Virel, was a hybrid-born agent with the uncanny ability to adapt to foreign customs. Her assignment was straightforward in theory. Enter human space under a false identity, embed in a commercial hub, and map the unexplained transport network. Her entry point was Atlas Station, a sprawling orbital complex above the temperate colony, world of New Horizon. Atlas was loud, bright, and restless, traits Kay had been briefed to expect from human settlements. Music drifted from open concourses, market stalls overflowed with goods from dozens of worlds, and multilingual announcements layered over one another in a steady rhythm. Kay's cover identity was that of a merchant's assistant, and her forged credentials passed every automated scan. She spent her first days walking the station, logging ship arrivals and departures, noting cargo types and registry origins. The oddities were immediate. A freighter named Aurora Gate arrived from the Marek. Belt with no recorded gate departure, another vessel, Silver Current, offloaded rare alloys normally mined light years away. Yet its declared travel time suggested it had come from only one jump sector over. The official records made no sense, but the humans acted as if nothing were unusual. Kay pressed deeper, arranging conversations with dock workers, traders, and pilots. Most were friendly, curious, even disarmingly open, yet every time she tried to trace a route or understand their navigation, the details blurred. Pilots would say, "Oh, we took the long way around," or, "You know how drift corridors are," unpredictable. It was as if they were speaking truthfully, yet hiding the truth in plain sight. Meanwhile, two other covert teams reported in from different human territories, one embedded with mining crews on the Marek Belt, the other with cargo handlers at Kepler Station. Both teams found similar anomalies, routes that shouldn't exist, travel times that defied the laws of the known jump grid. In a secure Council relay hub orbiting a neutral moon, these field reports were compiled for Threvik, the analyst who had first flagged the anomalies. His conclusion unsettled even the most cautious members of the intelligence division. If these routes are real, then humanity has developed stable transit corridors independent of our gate network. This is not only a logistical breakthrough, it's a strategic one. They could move fleets, resources, or colonists without notice, beyond our monitoring range. Back on Atlas Station, Kay received an unexpected lead. A pilot she had been casually questioning mentioned a refueling outpost between points in deep space. The phrase caught her attention. It wasn't standard navigational jargon. With some careful prompting, the pilot described it as a quiet place where ships just appear, without any gate arrival logs. Following the hint, Kay booked passage on a cargo hauler bound for an unremarkable asteroid system. The journey was ordinary at first. Slow, steady acceleration toward the edge of the mapped zone. Then, without warning, the stars outside seemed to twist. The view through the forward viewport shimmered, and the next moment, they were coasting, above an asteroid field she had never seen in any Council chart. The hauler's crew acted as though nothing extraordinary had happened. "Almost there," the captain said casually, pointing to a small structure anchored to a drifting rock. Kay tried to steady her thoughts. She hadn't felt the surge of a jump, nor the spatial disorientation of a gate transfer. And yet, they had crossed an impossible distance in less than a minute. Somewhere in her training, she remembered a phrase used by old starfarers. Slipping. Between the seams. If this was what humanity had mastered, the Council's debates were already too far behind the reality unfolding. The outpost, clinging to the asteroid's surface, looked almost ordinary, an array of docking arms, fuel tanks, and small habitation modules. But as Kay Varel stepped from the cargo hauler onto the main platform, she felt a subtle vibration through the deck. It wasn't the hum of generators or life support systems. It was deeper, almost resonant, as if the structure itself was in quiet conversation with the space around it. The crew moved with practiced efficiency, offloading cargo and swapping empty containers for full ones. No security guards stood watch, yet every visitor seemed to know exactly where they could and could not go. Kay followed her assigned contact, a tall human named Rylan, into the operations wing. "This won't take long," Rylan said, handing over a manifest for her employer's trade records. "You're free to wait in the observation lounge." The lounge overlooked the docking bay. From her seat, Kay had a clear view of ships arriving and departing. That's when she noticed something impossible. A sleek Corvette appeared against the darkness with no warning, no flare of arrival, no distortion ripple. One heartbeat, the docking arm hung empty. The next, it held a ship. Kay had seen stealth vessels before, but those always relied on masking their approach. This was different. The Corvette hadn't traveled through space to get here. It had simply been somewhere else. And now it was here. She took a small recorder from her sleeve and discreetly logged the event. The readings showed no gravitational surge, no hyperspace wake, only a faint spike in background radiation, almost like the afterimage of a closed door. Later, during a break in the cargo operations, Kay ventured toward a maintenance corridor. She passed a crewman working on a wall panel. He glanced at her, smiled politely, and returned to his task. Inside the panel, she caught a glimpse of something she couldn't identify. It wasn't metal in the conventional sense. Its surface seemed to shift subtly, like oil over water, patterns flickering in and out of sight. Her instincts told her this was the source, the quiet heartbeat she'd felt through the station floor. Rylan's voice broke her focus. "You're curious for a merchant's assistant?" Kay straightened smoothly, covering her unease. "I like to understand where my employer's goods pass through. Helps me talk to clients." He studied her for a moment, then shrugged. "Fair enough. Just remember, places like this don't exist for the records. You either know how to find them or you never will." It was both a warning and an invitation. Back in the Council relay hub, Threvik reviewed Kay's transmitted findings alongside data from the other teams. Similar anomalies appeared in every report, sudden appearances of ships, untraceable travel routes, and materials with no clear origin. More troubling still, the energy signatures, when detectable, bore a strange resemblance to ancient readings buried in the Council's deep archives, records from before the gate network was unified. Threvik hesitated before including that detail in his summary. Ancient technology was a dangerous subject. It implied civilizations had once wielded capabilities the modern galaxy could not match. If humanity had found something like that, and learned to use it, then the strategic balance was already shifting beyond the Council's control. Back on the asteroid outpost, Kay secured a passage onward, joining a freighter bound for the human core worlds. The captain, an older woman with sharp eyes, chatted with her during the pre-departure checks. "You're new to our lanes," the captain said knowingly. "Here's a tip. Don't try to map them. They change. The corridors shift. You can travel the same path twice and end up somewhere different each time." Kay smiled politely, but inside her thoughts raced. Corridors that shifted were even harder to track than fixed hidden routes. That meant the Council might never fully chart the network, even if they found it. When the freighter departed, Kay felt the same impossible transition she had on the hauler, a smooth, soundless shift. In reality, one moment they were docked at the asteroid, The next, the viewport was filled with the golden glow of a distant sun, and somewhere deep inside, she began to suspect that this wasn't just human innovation. This was something far older and far more deliberate. The freighter's arrival. Point was unlike anything Kay Varel had seen in her years as an operative. It wasn't a formal spaceport, nor a city-bound orbital hub. Instead, the ships clustered like drifting petals around a massive structure that glimmered faintly against the darkness, a hollow ring, kilometers across, with sections glowing in shifting patterns. The crew simply called it the Halo. Docking was seamless. There were no clearance codes exchanged, no bureaucratic exchanges, just a handshake of encrypted data that Kay's devices couldn't decode. As she stepped out, she was struck by the absence of the usual mechanical hum of orbital stations. Instead, a low, almost musical resonance filled the air, steady and calming. Rylan, who had accompanied her from the asteroid outpost, noticed her listening. "First time hearing the Halo?" he asked. She nodded. "It's not just machinery," he said. "Some say it's alive in a way." That notion unsettled her. The Council's technology operated on principles of control and predictability. Alive machinery meant unpredictable outcomes. Kay's mission was clear: gather intelligence and find a way to trace the roots. But each step into human-controlled space seemed to take her further from familiar ground. In the market district of the Halo, she found a mix of humans and alien traders, exchanging goods without the rigid tariffs and oversight that Council worlds enforced. High-grade alloys sat beside artisanal crafts, medicinal compounds alongside rare foodstuffs. She noted one particularly strange detail. The raw materials here matched some of the unexplained cargoes from her earlier reports. The origin labels were vague, marked only with star-like glyphs she didn't recognize. Later, she managed to slip into a quieter section of the Halo, a corridor where polished black walls reflected her image in distorted shapes. She caught sight of a hatch left ajar and stepped inside. The room beyond was wrong. In its center floated a lattice of light, delicate and constantly shifting, each strand weaving into others like a living map. It wasn't a star chart in the conventional sense, too fluid, too organic. The pattern bent and flexed in ways that suggested the corridors she'd heard about, but these moved like living veins, pulsing faintly. Her recorder hummed quietly as it logged the display. But before she could capture more than a few seconds of footage, a voice came from behind her. "You shouldn't be in here." Kay turned slowly. The woman in the doorway was human, dressed in a simple dark coat. Her expression unreadable. She wasn't armed, but her presence radiated a quiet authority. "My apologies," Kay began, slipping into her merchant's assistant cover. "I was looking for the cargo registry office." The woman shook her head. "Don't bother. You're not here for trade." She stepped closer, studying Kay's face. "Your counsel. And before you try to deny it..." "Yes, I know." Kay's pulse quickened. "If you know, why not report me?" "Because you've come this far," the woman replied. "And maybe you're ready to understand what this is, instead of just trying to catalog it." Kay hesitated. She wasn't accustomed to her cover being pierced so cleanly. The woman gestured toward the lattice of light. "This isn't something humanity built from scratch," she said. "It's something we found, buried deep, forgotten by the galaxy. We learned to listen to it, and it listens to us in return." Kay's mind raced. Ancient technology, the theory Threvik had quietly flagged, was now confirmed. Meanwhile, far away on Earth, Alara Miles received a secure message from her network of observers. Council agents had infiltrated multiple human zones. They were getting closer to the truth. Alara knew what that meant. The silent smile might soon have to give way to an unmistakable message. Back on the Halo, the woman's final words to Kay carried a weight that made her understand just how far beyond the Council's reach this truly was. "You can't map the seams," she said softly. "You can only be invited to travel them." In the Council's vaulted chamber, the latest intelligence streams glimmered across layered displays. Threvik stood at the center, shoulders tight, as senior delegates reviewed the intercepted footage from Kay Varel's mission. A pause settled over the room as the image of the Halo's lattice filled the air, a shifting web of light that pulsed like a living thing. "That," murmured Delegate Orlex, "is not theirs. That is older. The word rippled through the chamber like a shadow across still water. Ancient technology wasn't just rare. It was the kind of find that could redraw galactic power lines overnight. The Council's unspoken understanding was clear. Anything predating the Gate Network was too dangerous to let a single species control. Threvik broke the silence. "We have confirmed multiple hubs, each accessible only through routes we cannot trace. Humanity has integrated this system seamlessly. They're not flaunting it, they're protecting it." Delegate Orlex leaned forward. "Then our course is obvious. We seize the technology before they seal it beyond our reach." But not everyone agreed. A few delegates shifted uneasily. Direct confrontation risked shattering the fragile unity among the member worlds, and humanity, for all its youth, had proven adaptable in ways the Council had yet to predict. While the chamber debated, a quiet signal was sent. Orders for discreet interception of key human envoys and for surveillance ships to shadow suspected corridor entry points. On the Halo, Kay remained with the woman who had exposed her cover. They moved through narrow maintenance passages, past smooth, curving walls that seemed to hum in recognition of their footsteps. "You're not going to stop the Council from coming," Kay said, breaking the silence. The woman glanced back. "We don't intend to stop them." That answer caught Kay off guard. "You're just letting them in?" "Letting them see," the woman corrected. "It's one thing to fear what you don't understand. It's another to step into it and realize you're not the one holding the controls." They emerged into a chamber overlooking one of the Halo's inner rings. From here, Kay could see small vessels gliding into empty space and vanishing, not blinking into hyperspace, not accelerating to light speed, just dissolving into somewhere else entirely. "Your people think this is a weapon," the woman continued. "It isn't. But it can change the balance of power." Kay absorbed her words, aware her recorder was still logging everything. Yet for the first time in her career, she hesitated to send the data. She had seen enough to know that once the Council acted, there would be no going back. Elsewhere, in a fortified communications node on Earth, Ilara Miles read the latest reports from human intelligence. Council movements were tightening. Ships were already on the edges of hidden corridors, and agents had begun shadowing merchant traffic. She leaned back, considering her next move. The silent smile humanity had shown so far had been deliberate restraint. But with the Council's gaze fixed unblinking on their secrets, it might be time for a demonstration, not of force in the traditional sense, but of something more unsettling. Inevitability. Orders went out quietly across the network. Certain hubs would misalign for Council surveillance ships, leaving them stranded far from their intended destinations. Others would invite select Council craft inside the corridors, escorted, observed, and guided, but never allowed to chart their path. 2 days later, a Council destroyer on stealth patrol near the asteroid outpost reported an anomaly, a sudden displacement of local spacetime. Before they could react, the ship was surrounded by empty stars, no beacon, no known landmarks. Then, just as quickly, it reappeared in Council space. Yet weeks had passed on the outside, though the crew swore only hours had gone by. It was the kind of message Ilara intended, a reminder the corridors didn't just belong to humanity, they decided who belonged in them. Kay, still aboard the Halo, realized the Council's move was coming sooner than anyone thought, and when it did, she wasn't sure which side she'd be standing on. The Council fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of Sol's defensive perimeter, ships forming a vast crescent against the pale glow of Earth. From orbit, the planet looked serene, oceans glittering, cloud bands curling lazily across its surface. Yet in the Council's command decks, tension rippled like static before a storm. Threvik stood on the primary flag bridge, eyes locked on the tactical display. Dozens of red-marked signatures represented humanity's defense grid, stationary, silent, and apparently unarmed. It was too quiet. "Broadcast our terms," ordered Delegate Orlex, her voice sharp. A signal beam lanced across the void, carrying the Council's demand for immediate surrender of all corridor technology and unrestricted access to its hubs. They expected stalling, negotiation, or even bluster. Instead, the reply came in the form of a single, tight-beam transmission. Recording. It showed a small chamber bathed in dim light. A human, Elara Miles, stood at its center, hands resting lightly on a console of smooth black glass. She smiled, not mockingly, not in defiance, but as if she knew something they did not. Her voice was calm. "The corridors are not ours to give. They were here before any of us, and they will be here after. But they've chosen to hear us, and to speak for us. You've already stepped inside, and you've already seen what happens when you try to mark the path." That was not a warning. That was an introduction. Before anyone could respond, the display shifted. The Council fleet's tactical map changed abruptly. Thousands of additional signatures appeared, not as warships, but as shadows. They moved in impossible arcs, phasing in and out of position, surrounding the Council vessels without crossing a single line of known approach. Some appeared to be human ships. Others were unlike anything in recorded history, sleek, angular forms with geometries that shifted when you tried to focus on them. In the Halo's observation chamber, Kay Virel watched a live relay of the same scene. The woman beside her folded her arms. "You see? This is what happens when you try to own something that isn't yours. It owns you instead." On the Council flagship, alarms triggered across every deck, not from incoming fire but from navigation systems. Their star maps had dissolved into unreadable shapes. Course plots failed. Even the distance to Earth fluctuated wildly between readings. "This is a breach of," Orlex began, but the words faltered as the flagship's viewports darkened. Space outside was no longer studded with familiar constellations. It was a swirling river of light, stretching into infinity. Ilara's voice returned. "You came to take, but the corridors don't respond to force. They respond to intent. You can walk them as a guest, or be carried as cargo. The choice was always yours." Then, without any sensation of movement, the fleet found itself scattered, each ship deposited near its own homeworld, days or weeks from the nearest Council hub. No damage, no casualties, only silence. Back in the chamber, Threvik stood alone, replaying the message in his mind. It hadn't been a threat. It had been an offer. And though pride burned in his chest, he felt something else too, curiosity. On the Halo, Kay made her decision. She transmitted her full report not to the Council, but to a secure channel in human space, adding her own note. "I think they might listen." Weeks later, at the edge of the Orion Arm, a small Council science vessel appeared at a quiet corridor. Hub. No weapons, no demands, just a single formal request for entry. The Halo's gates opened without hesitation, and somewhere deep in the network, the corridors hummed, not in warning, but in welcome. The smile, it seemed, had spoken after. "All."